And rising cases of insecurity, a persistent blackout, and economic hardship facing the country dominated the headlines this week. Welcome to Standpoint. I am Precious Amayu. Now, the Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, on Tuesday threatened to revoke the licenses of electricity distribution companies over continued poor power supply nationwide. Mr. Adelabu made this threat via his X account after meeting with the chief executives of Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, AEDC, and Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company, IBEDC, and the managing director of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN. According to the minister, it is disheartening to witness continued decline in power supply despite the concerted efforts to improve the situation. The tweet reads, quote, "As the Minister of Power, I am deeply concerned about the deteriorating electricity supply across the country. In response to this pressing issue, I have summoned the chief executives of Abuja Electricity Distribution Company and Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company, as well as the managing director of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, to a crucial meeting. This meeting aims to discuss the worsening power supply in their respective regions and collectively find lasting solutions," end quote. The minister went on to say, "Moving forward, I am committed to holding all distribution companies accountable for their performance. Willful non-performance will not be tolerated, and severe consequences, including license revocation, may be imposed," end quote. This tweet by the Minister of Power elicited a lot of reactions from Nigerians. And to discuss this issue extensively, Professor of Energy and Electricity Law, University of Lagos, Yemi Oke, joins me via Zoom. Good to have you join us, Prof.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm happy to be with you.
So the thinking of Nigerians is that by now, because of the promises that have been made in year out, that a power outage will be a thing, would be the exception and not the norm. So, Prof, talk to us about why we are still having this conversation, even after so many reforms, whether it was in 2004, 2005, 2011, and so many investments also made in that sector.
Well, it's a long way. It's a tortuous journey that we have traveled as a country in the power sector. Fundamentally, we haven't gotten it right in the power sector because of a whole lot of issues, ranging from the actual privatization itself and the entities that got on board in terms of both the generation companies and the distribution companies and so many other things. We've also had challenges with the regulatory aspect of it, which is crucial because once you privatize, of course, the main task of government is to bring on board effective, knowledge-based, prudent sector regulation. And then we have, of course, other issues relating to Nigeria as a polity. Even on the side of the consumers, we've had a series of theft by way of meter bypass and other petty theft in the power sector. And I said from inception, because I'm not tired, I can't be tired of pointing it out. Fundamentally, I think we got it wrong, the way and the manner the privatization was carried out. I guess too late to start to complain now. And I've always advocated for the fact that we need to take some difficult decision as a country. And I'm glad that the current administration hasn't shied away from taking some radical, difficult decisions for Nigeria to start working. That's why we have the power sector hasn't worked. And I mean, your guess is as good as mine. More than 10 years of actual privatization. We're still even generating about the same amount of megawatts we're generating, meaning we haven't really achieved much in terms of power sector. And we haven't seen noticeable trend of foreign direct investment in the power sector because, to be honest with you, the sector is not buoyant. And nobody wants to plunge his or her investment in the sector where the existing players are having difficulties recouping their investment now. And I mean, if in a situation where you have almost all, except for one or two of the discos being technically insolvent, that's not a sector that you want to plunge your investment if you're a prudent investor. And there are a whole lot of issues. Some we have documented Some were advocated. We've even suggested a way to get out of these rules that we've got ourselves in as a country. But it's never too late to start. And I can see the body language of the current administration. Everything points to the fact that the current administration is ready to get things done differently. And the basis or the reason for that is not far-fetched, because nature then, by divine prominence, the current president had experimented with this idea of getting it right in the power sector. Even as a governor in Lagos State, I always saw that example of Lagos Aaron that was forged because of federal might. And I want to kind of, in retrospect, ask the question, assuming we had allowed or supported, or assuming Nigeria as a country had allowed the Lagos Aaron project to see the light of day, by now we will not be talking of these challenges that we're talking about. Now that we're not starting to get the state involved, that the states should not try to generate, transmit, and distribute.
And Prof, we see how lackadaisical, there about the states are, even with the new electricity bill. Almost like, they're not interested in looking in that direction for now. But let's talk about the discos, because they are the ones that or at least some of them, are the ones that the minister is now summoning for a meeting. What you talked about something being fundamentally wrong with the privatization. On the side of the discos, what was fundamentally wrong?
That's an important question, and let me tell Nigerians again. I have spoken about it and I've written about it, and I stand by my position. The entities that bought those discos ordinarily shouldn't have been the one to have access to those discos. Why? Because power sector then was packaged as a political compromise for certain obvious reasons. And it saddens my heart because the last administration now of President Buhari, of course, you are aware of our advocacies, and they only acknowledge the fact that truly, in line with our position, power sector, particularly the discos, was sold as a matter of political patronage, because the indices are there. When they got these entities, money did not come in. There was no foreign direct investment for the discos, and I'm being honest with Nigerians. What they did was to approach Nigerian banks for all kinds of structured and syndicated lending, for what we call acquisition financing, meaning the money you put down to buy an asset. So the regulators and the players were not really keen about asking relevant questions as to, having bought, or if you are able to buy these entities, how do you take it forward? Because there was a lot of expectations as to power sector privatization. And they approached Nigerian banks, mopping up all the dollars in there. And of course, the banks also started having issues with their some of the banks exceeded their single obligor limits, meaning the maximum amount of money we could lend to an individual or a corporate entity. So they lend money to these entities. And then they were lending dollars at the rate of 161, 166 dollars to Naira. And these entities were to bill Nigerians in Naira. So simple mathematics. They have their debts to service, a lot of meter bypass. They have not increased the amount of megawatts that will be distributed to Nigerians. So they have to put their humongous cost around the 4,000 megawatts that they are distributing. Because if they are distributed, if they're going to distribute more, like 20,000 megawatts, they will spread the cost. Cost meaning cost of production, employee costs, all the costs, humongous costs, to give to their directors and what have you. They will be able to spread the cost over 20,000 megawatts or more. But now the costs are going to be spread around 3,000, 4,000 megawatts. That's a major challenge. Then dollars started going north while Naira started going south, meaning they will need to be adjusting electricity tariffs to keep pace with the foreign exchange, which you and I know the figures now. And an average Nigerian is not ready for consistent increase in electricity tariffs because they're not really getting value for it. And we won. And that was why 4 of the 5 banks we predicted actually caved in, because we expected 5 banks to go down the drain because of their needless exposure to the power sector. We won't. And we haven't done things differently. And I've said, for us to go out of this challenge that we have, there's no magician or magic, except we go via another round of reacquisition and refinancing, which will also involve government having to dilute some of their shares in the sector, the 40% stakes of the federal government. Of course, I can say the Minister of Finance and Minister of Finance Incorporated calling for the shares of the federal government in those discourse. Many things are about to be done. Of course, we heard recently the fraud in the Rural Electrification Agency, which we had advocated had no place in the law. It shouldn't be, even under the old law. Rural means rural. It was a kind of generation upgrade or distribution upgrade. That should ordinarily not have been a federal government concern. Even under the Constitution, before it was amended recently, it vests off-grid generation in the hands of the states. So rural electrification under the old electric power sector reform act and the unamended Constitution was for states and state assembly. So then we had federal monopolies or federal agencies by way of rural electrification fund, rural electrification agency, doing solarization at the level of the rural areas and communities. That's a misnomer. And we kicked against it alongside other like 200 errors in the old law. The law has been repealed. I was taken aback. I was disappointed that we still retain Rural Electrification Agency and Rural Electrification Fund in the new electricity act that we had. I'm even surprised that we retained HEMBET, Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company, which was an interim measure until power sector become competitive. So we say, I mean, though the law isn't really bad compared to the one we had, the repeat law, the current law, because there's no perfect law anywhere in the world, I've found the current law had taken on board certain destructive components that wouldn't need as a nation.
And Prof, I will get to that, as we begin to, look at solutions in just a minute. But I wanted to talk to you because you mentioned tariff. And you said that, look, if the power supply, because Nigerians are not getting, that the power supply, you shouldn't be thinking of increasing tariff. But, there has been that conversation about power supply and the cost of operation, which should come first, almost like the chicken and the egg. The discourse are saying we need, our cost of operation is taking a hit without, increasing tariff. But Nigerians are saying we don't have power supply, so why should we be increasing tariff? How should this be addressed?
Let me, of course, I still want to talk about the position of the minister, which is important, which really was the flank of our discussion. But let me address the issue of tariff and adjustment in tariff. I think an average Nigerian will be willing and ready to pay slightly more for electricity if it's available, because at any rate, it will be cheaper than diesel and petrol. But getting Nigerians to pay for darkness is not legal, it's illegal. And we can't start to think seriously about tariff now. I've said this several times. Even under the repealed electric power sector reform act of 2005, we had PCAF, Power Consumer Assistance Fund. It was a pool of funds meant to mitigate hardship of any upward increase in electricity tariff. It targeted the poor. Under the current Electricity Act of 2003, PCAF is also retained gladly, meaning because the power sector, the law says it shouldn't be applied as direct subsidies, meaning that should ordinarily not be subsidies in the power sector. The only set of human beings or the only set of Nigerians who can be subsidized in the power sector are poor Nigerians, and that can only happen by PCAF. But we've been having subsidies in the power sector, and that's not prudent. When the current administration was thinking with the ideas, I supported that. We can't afford too many subsidies in the energy sector. We've had humongous subsidies in the petroleum sector. a lot of Nigerians are not aware that we have a lot of subsidies in the power sector until some of us started exposing it. And that's not prudent. The country is challenged. Let's face the fact, and we need to get Nigeria working again. So I said, Nigerians may be able to pay slightly for electricity, but whatever form of subsidy to help the poor must be given to the poor. You can't subsidize generation. There will be transmission losses, generation losses. By the time you are generating 5 megawatts, by the time it gets to Nigerians, it is 3,000 megawatts. And government will have subsidized 2,000 megawatts or less, about 1,000 megawatts of nothing that will go to the hands of commercial entities or to waste. And that wouldn't also get the discos and the gencos to be prudent because government is already paying for their losses anyway. Why would they want to be prudent? But if you are subsidizing actual consumption of Nigerians, whatever mathematics you want to deploy to get to the formula, then that's fine. And that's not new. In most countries of the world, they have direct subsidies to the poor. If you go to England, which example is readily available here and next door, you will see an average electricity bill indicating government subsidy of £20, £30, £50 in the electricity bill, meaning it is from the readings of an household that the subsidy gets to. Not subsidizing the gencos or the discos who you are simply telling them to be inefficient in their loss in their overhead and costs. And the factor in cost. There's a technical formula for that, which I don't like boring Nigerians with those formulas, but every cost of gas, cost of purchase, cost of staff, consultancy, gives to the directors, to the MDs, to all the managers, all the expensive lifestyles of the managers are factored in the cost of a tariff that they put to Nigerians because it's all part of production. And that's not prudent. And I challenge the regulator. So let me briefly go to the aspect of the minister. The minister, a good friend, is agitated because all is not well in the power sector. I didn't start with him. It also didn't start with the current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is so passionate about getting the power sector to work, even as a governor years back. So you can imagine his level of enthusiasm in getting the power sector to work. And it's not working. I would blame the regulator. I think it's not appropriate for the minister to start to relate directly with the regulated entities. And I didn't comment in public, but somebody said, oh, it's not right because even the Minister of Finance will not summon Nigerian banks. Because you have a regulator in place. The government needs to take a back seat. Once you are privatized, you need effective, knowledge-based, patriotic, fearless, sincere person or group of persons to regulate, to get things working. That shouldn't be the concern of the federal government. So the appropriate agency or unit to interface with the discos and gencos and MBOT and every entity in the power sector is the regulator. So it's the regulator that will summon the discos or the gencos. It's the regulator that will revoke their licenses or threaten to revoke their licenses, put them on their toes and put them into compliance and do the right thing. And we've been having serious consistency of challenges in terms of regulation. And because
and Prof, I was going to ask you about that. You know, sorry to interrupt you. This challenge with regulation, and I like the example you gave earlier about, you know, the Minister of Finance now having to deal with banks when it's supposed to be the CBN, you know, who should do that job. So where is that gap in terms of, you know, regulation? Because the minister also said something which a lot of Nigerians would have found very shocking, is the issue of load rejection. When Nigerians need light, and yet, you know, you have discos who are engaging in load rejection. But I understand I have to go on break, Prof. When we return, I'll let you speak to that issue. You're watching Standpoint. We're talking about the challenges in the power sector. We'll take a break now and return with Prof. Stay with us. And thanks for staying with us. You're watching Standpoint. We're still looking at the challenges in the power sector and the summon, you know, of the Chairman, Chief Executive of Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, the IBEDC, that's Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company, and the Managing Director of the Transmission Company of Nigeria by the Minister of Power to address these issues. We've been speaking with Professor of Energy and Electricity Law, University of Lagos, Yemi Oke. Prof, just before we took that break, I was asking you to speak to the gaps in the regulatory, aspect of the power sector, especially because the minister also talked about the fact that some of these discos are, engaging in load rejection.
Thank you. And unfortunately, we are being challenged in terms of knowledge-based regulation. And I'm speaking as a concerned Nigeria. I'm also not having light where I am, and I'm sweating. It has passed. Nobody's spared. I went to the head office of the disco, they were on diesel. So it's a national, even I'm sure sometimes they use generator in Nassau, in courts. So nobody is spared of this challenge. So it's a collective challenge because, as we have predicted, the power sector is about to collapse, if not already collapsed, on all of us together as a country, as a people. One, we've not been fortunate to have effective regulation. And that's sad, because when you're talking about, we've been having human beings at the level of regulation. A number of them, about 3 or 4 human beings have been there as the chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission and the entire body over the last 3 or 4 regimes that we've passed there since inception, the commission. When we talk of regulation, for instance, let's talk of the banking regulation, telecoms regulation. Government will not be able to do anything meaningful, a way of intervention, a way of policy, unless and until they get in place somebody who understands the sector and is able to frontally engage the stakeholders. We know ourselves in the power sector. Those who are doing the right thing, those who are not doing that. Those who are not doing the right. Once you have privatized your entity, as we did as a country, the only job of government is to ensure strong, effective, independent regulator. It will even regulate government entities. We haven't had the fortune of that. It's about laws and sector regulation. It's about law and regulatory issues. It's more of law, because it's the law that says you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't do this, you don't do that. This regulation says do this, don't do this. And we ensure compliance. Even if you are going to do or deploy regulation in the area of engineering or safety, it's the law that will stipulate it. It's the policy that or regulatory instrument that will stipulate it. And you go and enforce. We need to zoom on the lens of governance on the entities, on the regulated entities. We haven't done that sufficiently. I would just simply say we've not had effective sector regulation in the power sector. At some point, I raised some questions. I said, hey, I felt challenged, and I said, even as an employee of the federal government in the University of Lagos, a memo could deploy someone knowledgeable about the sector there, even on the salary as a professor, to go and do the right thing there. This shouldn't be about job for the boys or girls. It's something that affects everybody until we fix that. Now you're talking of load rejection. Let me tell you what they're doing about load rejection, so that Nigerians will know. One, you can't store megawatts. Once megawatt is allocated to a particular disco, you must pay for it, you must sell it, make money. If you don't sell it, you are going to pay. If you sell it, you will pay. So the discos will now target areas where they have high ends, employees, VIs, islands, and the commercial areas where people can afford to pay any amount of money for megawatts. And they concentrate the division of megawatts in those areas because they are sure whatever bills or tariff they impose on them, they're going to give to you. And we've had a kind of tariff structure that is not democratic. We have tariffs for the poor, tariff for the rich. The rich can afford to pay 10 times of what an average Nigerian will not be able to pay, rather they get life. And we don't need that kind of segmentation in the country. So if they give them megawatts, meaning the discourse, technically they do their mathematics, knowing how much do we sell this, which areas will need this, and if the area where they can maximize their income wouldn't need more than 200 megawatts for that day, and they have 600, they will rather reject 300 because the remaining 300 or extra, once is sold at huge cost, each tariff structure to the high earner, the poor Nigerians will not be able to afford it. And it's not going to be good business to them. So they will just reject that, oh, we don't need this much, we need this little that you can sell to this
almost like power racketeering as well in that sector.
It's not almost like power racketeering.
It is power racketeering.
Power racketeering, hoarding, we call it megawatt hoarding.
I see why you were berating.
That's why Nigerians are being put in darkness. And somebody is there who want to regulate and they're not saying the same thing.
Exactly, Prof. I see why you're talking about the regulatory side and how they really need to do their job. There's a lot, that need to be said about the power sector.
The success of the power sector is 90% dependent on the
regulator.
Regulation. 90%.
I wish we had enough time to really analyze all of these issues, because
I'm always there anytime.
Absolutely, we'll have to bring you back.
I'm willing to.
Yes, Prof. We'll have to bring you back because we really need to explore all of this chain of the power sector. Thank you so much for your time. Professor of Energy and Electricity Law, University of Lagos, Yemi Oke.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's move on now to the incessant insecurity that has been troubling the northern part of the country. Another attack has cast a shadow of fear over the Kuriga, I think that was over the Kuriga community in Chinku local government area of Kaduna State. Now, some bandits were reported to have invaded the LEA primary school, Kuriga, kidnapping scores of pupils on Thursday morning. The head teacher of the primary school, Sani Abdullahi, confirmed that 287 pupils from the primary and secondary school were kidnapped by bandits. The governor of the state, Sani, who visited the community on Thursday, assured that the government is committed to ensuring the safe and unarmed return of the kidnapped pupils.
The number of children or the students that have been kidnapped. But what I can say here is that by the grace of God, under my able leadership, we will try as much as possible to ensure that every child returns. By the grace of God, inshallah. We are doing our best. I'm going to work with the community leaders. I want to work with the traditional leaders here, as well as the youth, to ensure that every child returns back home by the grace of God. And we have also sat down with the parents of those children that have been kidnapped. Even we have sent a strong message to the mothers, and we made it clear to them that one of the most important responsibilities of the government is to ensure that we protect the lives and properties of our citizens, and we ensure that by the grace of God, every child return home by the grace of God.
It's also followed swiftly from the nation's capital as President Tinubu directed security and intelligence agencies to immediately rescue the victims and ensure that justice is served against the perpetrators. Now, the wife of the president, Senator Luremi Tinubu, also called for capital punishment for anyone found guilty of kidnapping in the country.
I said it in my speech that whoever is kidnapping young people is sick, cruel, and a coward.
Yes, yes.
Enough is enough. And I call on the state governors that once we take hold of them, they deserve capital punishment. Why don't they take people their size? Why are they torturing our children? What they are doing is trying to kill our future. We all know parents, when we are old, we rely on our children, and we see them that our investment has not gone to waste, especially when they are successful. Why would you go and take them from schools? Why? I don't really know. But right now, I think enough is enough. As a former lawmaker, I believe that any one of them captured deserve capital punishment.
Yes. All right. Expert on strategic communications and former director of Nigerian Army Public Relations, retired Brigadier General Sani Kukasheka, joins me from our Abuja studio to discuss this. Good to have you join us.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me on your program.
287 pupils kidnapped from just one school, both primary and secondary. Let's get your reaction to this, and what statement does this make?
It is quite sad and unfortunate, and it's an incident that ought not to occur. But we just hope and pray that these helpless children will be rescued and will not be harmed also.
And General, when you say that this is an incident that ought not to have occurred, what could have been done in terms of prevention?
Yeah, well, quite a number of things ought to have been done. Remember, we tend to gloss over issue. I could remember there was a policy in respect of protection of school, and quite a number of presentations and advices were given as to, the security of our learning institutions, be it tertiary, secondary, and primary school, given the fact that these criminal elements, they have taken undue advantage of the vulnerability of the security, arrangement in some of these areas to perpetrate their acts. Remember what happened in Chibok, what happened in Chilapchi, and Kankara, and so many other places. Now it is Kuriga. And just as I'm talking with you, I think there was also an incident in Isa local government area of Sokoto State. The pupils of Zangaya School were also abducted by the criminal element. And I think there ought to have been a more robust security arrangement, in respect of these schools. But that is by the way. But I think the most important thing now is to rally around to ensure that these abducted children are rescued. That's the most important thing. And of course, putting machineries in place to ensure that this should be the last time such unprecedented abduction should take place in this country, anywhere.
And, security experts like yourself will say the prevention is within the purview of, the government and security agencies. But once, the abduction has happened or the incident has happened, you are now at the mercy of the kidnappers. And it looks like that's where we are now. How easy will it be in terms of recovery? Because we've heard the governor say, every child will return. But looking at where we still have some of the Chibok girls with their kidnappers, and we've not been that great in that regard. How optimistic are you that every child will be rescued? And do we have the capacity for that?
Well, given what happened in Dapchi and what happened in Kankara, I think you may believe that. But at the same time, if you look at what happened in Chibok again, the circumstances, though quite different, you will be pessimistic. But I think we should be optimistic in the sense that the circumstances this time around are different, and more so the information is very sketchy behind, the motive behind the abduction. It could be a chance thing, or it is a deliberate thing to, extort ransom, or even, the actors behind it, because you have proliferation of both the bandits and even terrorists, under different guises. So I am not trying to scare us, but you have to get accurate information in respect of that before you make up a judgment. But I hope and I pray that they will be rescued. And I'm quite optimistic about that because I am conscious of the fact that a lot of effort is being made, and that is why you have not been hearing so much in respect of it, because more efforts are being made to ensure that these children are rescued and brought back safely.
And Brigadier General, you have vast experience in this regard. We understand that there is a military formation, away from that school of about 30 minutes. What could have gone wrong with response to be able to take 287 pupils and teachers out of that school without any intervention?
Exactly. Actually, everybody is a kind of mind-boggling because what sort of means of transportation have they come with, to hide away? Because under normal circumstances, children being adventurous and very difficult to control, for you to hide 287 of them, at one fell swoop, really is mind-boggling. But that notwithstanding, we tend to look at things, in most cases, in fact, I've had directives being given to the army, not just the military. But of course, the military is just one component in dealing with these security challenges. Let's look at the other component. And that is why we are even calling beyond this whole society approach to a whole nation approach in dealing with security challenges. The military should not be the first line of respondence in terms of what is the school, what is the security arrangement in the school. And Kuriga community in itself, what is the security arrangement? What are the layers of security architectures you have? So these are the issues that you should interrogate. I'm not exonerating the military, so to speak, but the truth is that we have to look at it holistically to understand why certain things are happening. And we kept on saying that, look, the issue of people preparing or the concept of war economy is very real. There are people that are taking, advantage of the security challenges and making a hell lot of money out of it. So you will be dealing with people not knowing that actually they are actors in this kind of, criminal activity. So these are the issues. I think it is matter of intelligence. It is matter of information. What are those mechanisms? Early warning systems, given the precarious security situation we found ourselves in the various communities, in various districts and the local government areas. These are the issues that we have to look at, and there is need to also improve it. And if you look at it, we have been talking about community policing all this while, to the point that the states are prostrated. They have their own respective militias now, and to a large extent they are being accused of high-handedness and what have you. So the bottom line is to harmonize all this components of Nigerian society, allocate roles and responsibilities as well as resources. I think with that we can be able to prevent it, and we could be more proactive than the way it is. Because to a large extent we are just being fatalistic, in security issues, which is not supposed to be.
And two issues or two terms have been used in the last 10 years or 5 or even more, in terms of, our security challenges in the country. And we've been talking about failure of intelligence, and we've been talking about ungoverned spaces. I want to start with failure of intelligence, because I think it was in Plateau State where, when there were attacks in Mangu, you hear the residents say, we gave the military information and nothing was done. The attack happened successfully. There was no attempt to deter. There was no attempt to even respond. And so I want to ask you, what is going on with our security architecture that we're having that gap in terms of how we manage intelligence?
Actually, there is issue of, interagency, collaboration, coordination also, and cooperation. But beyond that, again, there is also issue of politicization of security, issues, which is not supposed to be. In most instances, by the time you scratch beyond the surface, you find out there are other political, intrigues that are in play in those instances. Because what people were saying were entirely different, and what the security agencies were saying are entirely different. And that calls for, proper coordination of the activities of not just the security agencies, but the whole society, as it were. What is the level of relationship between those authorities? When I mean authorities, it might not necessarily, the security agencies, but we have the traditional institutions, we have other leaders, take for instance religious groups and youth groups and what have you, in any given society. What is their role, what is their responsibility, to whom they report security, breaches or anything they see untoward? These are the issues that we have to look at. And in most cases, then again, that the level of patriotism or the loyalty to the state is diminishing with each passing day. So there is need for people to have greater sense of belonging so that they can take ownership of all these issues, so that they can report things. Because the problem we have is that people are struggling about what to eat. So they don't look at it as a kind of their responsibility to be concerned about security issues. So these are some of the issues. So people should not in any way be blaming people for no apparent reason, because in most instances some of the allegations are quite untrue, and the only thing is that the people that are supposed to give the information were just being economical with the truth. And unless we have a robust intelligence and information gathering system, will continue to have this problem. And we should stop politicizing issues. It is quite unfortunate instances of what happened in Plateau State, particularly Barikiladi and the one that you have mentioned. So basically, it is people should stop politicizing, in security issues, and report issues when they see them. And in most instances, you see people sponsoring atrocities against other communities, and that is exactly what is happening. So these are the issues, and they will point at the security agencies. The security agencies are not magicians. If you like, you should bring 1 million soldiers. If you like, you should bring 1 million policemen. So long as the people do not agree to live in peace, you continue to have that problem, and that is it. So you should look at also time-tested conflict resolution mechanisms, so that people will understand that we need to be there for each other. So it is not just the issue of blame game, so to speak. But that is it. But beyond that, again, the security agencies also need to up their game, in the sense that you need to really engage the various stakeholders so that they can give you timely and accurate information. They should understand beyond the misinformation that you are there for them. And you can imagine the level of sacrifices and the hardship the security forces are making. They are going through also, and yet they are not getting what they wanted, in the sense that there is no way you can give information and they will refuse to act on it, and there will be consequences. And these are the issues. So it's a whole gamut of the government itself, the security agencies, and other components of Nigerian society, so that there is that kind of continuous constructive engagement and monitoring of issues. It is not just enough. And of course, I'm not saying that if there are allegations of that nature, it should be thoroughly investigated, and those found culpable should be dealt with, because the issue we are having in most instances is kind of because there are no deterrents when there are mishaps of that nature. And life is very precious. And if there is loss of life, definitely there should be consequences for that. And where it is is a situation whereby actually it was accidental, that notwithstanding, there should be compensation and, of course, guarding against occurrence of such. But most importantly, everybody has to be given sense of belonging to contribute the little or the much he or she can give in terms of information, in terms of support, in terms of cooperation.
You touched on something earlier. In fact, two things. Once you said that sometimes you're speaking to someone not even knowing that the person you're speaking with is one of the non-state actors. And you also talked about how communities are sponsoring, attacks, people are sponsoring attacks on other communities. And we've heard about this compromise before, whether, amongst the non-state actors or the state actors. How far-reaching is this compromise? Because it will look as though some people are untouchable in the process.
Yes, exactly. That is what I talked about deterrence. I think to a large extent, we just have to make sure that our institutions are up and doing, particularly the criminal justice system. Because a lot of people, in fact, it is not just a lot of people, we all know it is because people do a lot of things and get away with it. There is no punishment or there is no reward, as the case may be. And that is why things do happen the way they happen. But if we make example of people, if you know that the rule of law is strengthened, that if you do anything wrong, the law will take its course on you. And if you do something right, definitely there will be reward. A lot of people will be will be happy to contribute what they want. And the last hope of the common man is the criminal justice system, that you will report issues and there will be remedy. So where there is no remedy, sometimes people are left to their own, imaginations and so on, taking law into their hands. These are the problems. And unless we go back and retrace ourselves, our steps, and dealing with people, that are found culpable in these instances, we will continue to have these problems.
And what can be done to go after those who are profiting from this terrorism and banditry, the financiers themselves?
Yeah, well, I think we are not liking legislation. I think it's issue of enforcement, but it is not even enough. The enforcement, there should be thorough investigation and following the whole judicial process. Not that somebody will commit offense and he becomes untouchable. No, the thing is that regardless of whoever you are, you should be you should be made to face the consequences. Some of the states, in fact, even the First Lady was calling for, death penalty for those involved in kidnapping. I think Kaduna State has promulgated a law in respect of that. But up to this moment, there are so many people that were caught involved in kidnapping or informants, and of course they were, found guilty, yet no action has been taken. And these are the kind of things that demoralize people, So, and in most cases, some of the people that carry out attack in some of these communities, they are known, but nobody will say. And I can give you an example. There was a time a particular community, the so-called leader of the community, they have seen him, he has been dispensing people, dispensing money, anybody with little problem, he will come to him and he will, but by the time they investigated them, they found that actually his means of livelihood was far from legitimate. He was involved in kidnapping, and there were proven instances that he gave out information. In fact, sometimes he acted as the armorer or the arms storeman for such people, and yet the community cordon such things. But we have even had instances where a foreigner lived in a community, and meanwhile he was running a business of gun for hire in that community, and nobody cares about that. So these are the issues that we really have to interrogate, and it is not just the people who are involved themselves, but even community leaders who cordon such people or give safe haven to them. They should be made to face the full wrath of the law. So these are the issues, not just those that are involved. But most importantly, again, there should be justice to the victims of these criminal activities or atrocities. You hardly hear, you will just hear compensation, and that has left so much to be desired. So it's a whole kind of package, so to speak, in dealing with it. Ensuring that whoever that is involved in that kind of thing, when found guilty, should be made to face the full wrath of the law, and the victims should be, adequately compensated, and there should be justice. So these are things. Nigerians, they are not looking for anything more than this, and it is not hard to do that. So so long as we have not been doing that, we will continue to have. Sincerely speaking, if there are deterrents, some of these kidnappers, if they are publicly executed or killed, they will have a second thought, because they don't want to even die. In fact, even the so-called Boko Haram terrorists, by the time you threaten them with it, you will see that they will come back to their normalcy. So basically, that is it. And unfortunately, we are treating all these things with kid gloves.
I wish we could have, talk more on this, but we do have to leave it there. We're all hoping for the return of these school pupils. Thank you so much for your time. Former Director, expert on strategic communications, and former Director
of Thank you too.
Public Relations, retired Brigadier General Sani Kukasheka. Thank you for talking to us. That Standpoint. Remember, you can watch a repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. I am Precious Amayu. Thanks for watching.